There's so much going on with healers in Dragonflight right now that I wanted to make this video to catch you guys up on all the changes and which specs are benefiting from them. I also wanted to go over my personal favorite healer of the moment, one that I'm really thinking strongly about maining as we get closer and closer to the release of Dragonflight. I just want to preface that my opinion on all these changes is coming from primarily the perspective of a Mythic Plus healer before we get too deep into them. So let's look at the big one first, a 40% increase to player health and creature damage. This is apparently done in response to healers feeling too powerful at level 70. As Blizzard said, throughout raid testing in the Dragonflight beta, we've noticed that healing has felt too powerful in level 70 content. This has largely been the result of the impact that 10 additional talent points can have on player damage and healing throughput at level 70. Seeing a big number like 40% can cause a pretty strong initial reaction, but thanks to some good people on my stream and a little bit of math, let me talk you off that ledge a little bit. So let's say a tank has 1,000 HP, for example. They get hit for 300 and you heal them for 200. That puts them at 900 health or 90% HP. With 40% increased health, now they have 1.4k hit points. Now the tank would have gotten hit for 420, but you still heal them for 200. Now they have 1,180 health or roughly 82%. So yes, it's a thing, but let's not pretend it's a 40% nerf to healing because that's absolutely not true. So I've heard a lot of people theory craft this change, but I haven't really seen anyone talk much about their actual experience with it yet. So I spammed M+ beta keys over the weekend to see how it felt, and I've got mixed feelings. On one hand, if a change like this can shake up the M+ meta so that actual healing and throughput is what makes a spec considered good, I'm here for it. I think most healers agree that we enjoy the challenge of healing more than just trying to pump the most DPS. On the other hand, I wouldn't say that my experience healing M+ and beta was necessarily easy before, and I worry that this change was made more with raid in mind. Keys over the weekend were notably more difficult, for some specs more than others. Specs that could do consistently high throughput like Resto Druid and Preservation Evoker didn't have as hard of a time with it, while on the other hand I felt it a lot more on my Disc Priest and my Holy Paladin. My overall impression is that I like the emphasis on healing over damage for M+, but I feel like the 40% increase might have been a little heavy-handed, and I kind of hope they scale it back just a little bit. This could also be a result of dungeon tuning, which still seems pretty harsh at the moment, and the combination of the two were making keys quite a handful over the weekend for me. If things do stay at this pace, I think we'll see a pretty serious change in what we look for when it comes to a Mythic Plus healer, which could be a really good thing, to be honest. Let's get into a couple specific classes now. There's been a ton of little bumps up and down to pretty much everyone, so we're going to spend our time on the major changes, starting with the one I'm really excited about, Disc Priest. Blizzard has admitted that balancing a spec like Disc across raid and dungeon content is a challenge due to the nature of how the spec plays, with both shielding and converting damage into healing through atonement. And earlier this week, Disc Priests were on suicide watch when the atonement duration from Radiance was reduced and Evangelism's cooldown was doubled. However, Disc Priest rejoice as the recent set of changes looks absolutely awesome for Disc. Both the atonement and evangelism nerfs were reverted, and Disc got some really great buffs for Mythic Plus. Since the Many is now passive and increases damage by 30% as long as you don't have more than 5 atonements out, and spoiler alert, that's not possible in Mythic Plus, meaning you're basically getting a 30% DPS increase in M+. On top of that, the PvP talent Blaze of Light was added to the base talent tree, which increases the damage of your Smite and Penance. So how did it actually feel to play? Well, there was definitely a noticeable damage increase to Disc when I ran it on beta. And even though percentage of damage that converts to healing through atonement was nerfed by 10%, that's still a 20% net gain with Sins of the Many. Didn't notice a really big bump to the healing in Mythic Plus, but that could have also been a side effect of the 40% health increase as well, sort of balancing everything out. Overall, I think it's going to be a healthy boost to discipline. I could see it immediately becoming competitive for that high mid-tier spot in the healer pecking order. It's definitely going to take a little more time and testing by the community to nail down. Topic of priests, let's talk Holy, which has been toned down a bit, particularly in the way of single target damage. Holy received a 14% damage nerf to just about all its DPS spells, as well as a series of small nerfs to its heals to the tune of 5%. On top of that, Imperial Blaze was taken from a 30-second cooldown to a 60-second cooldown, and while I do love my Holy Priest, I can totally understand the reasoning for this, as Holy single target damage was pretty nuts, and honestly, Imperial Blaze on a 30-second cooldown felt pretty OP. So when I fired up Holy Priest on beta over the weekend, the changes were definitely noticeable. The nerfs to healing on top of the overall 40% health increase made Holy Heals feel much less chunky than what we've been used to having since Shadowlands Season 3. This is not good for Holy at all, since it doesn't really have much to fall back on aside from gigantic heals, and for the first time in quite a while, I felt like Holy was having a harder time keeping up with healing. That's a big concern for a spec with no utility or external damage reduction. The damage hit was clear as well. Doubling the CD on Imperial Blaze was very significant, and that overall 14% DPS nerf was noticeable, as I actually started doing more overall DPS on my Disc Priest despite honestly being a much better Holy player at the moment. Unfortunately, I'd say Holy stocks are falling pretty fast, and I'd no longer consider this an S tier spec going into Dragonflight based on my weekend's testing, at least for Mythic Plus. Finally, under Resto Shaman, there's been a lot of talk about Shaman being a very low damage healer and just pretty undertuned overall, but after a series of damage buffs, I took them back into some dungeons on beta to see how things held up. The damage was definitely a lot more competitive and likely brings Shaman up to a place as a middling healer rather than bottom of the barrel, which is a start. While the number increase is nice, it still felt like it takes a long time to get the damage out on Shaman, and they don't really bring anything passive to the table. Their utility is somewhat taken a hit because of improvements to other classes too, like Evokers having Bloodlust and just about everyone having a kick now. So while it felt better, I could see Shaman as a candidate for additional buffs. So all that said, I want to get into my current favorite M+ specs on beta. If you watch my stream at all, you know I update my personal tier list pretty much every stream, but I'm not ready to make a true tier list video yet until tuning slows down a little bit and release gets closer. So I'm always looking for my own personal main for Dragonflight, so let's get into what I'm enjoying right now. I just want to take a second to talk about my current top 3 healers after all of these balance changes have gone into effect. At the top of my list would be Resto Druid, as they just feel like a very, very complete healing spec, even though they may not be the absolute best at any one particular thing. I just feel like I've always got what I need as far as healing kit and cooldowns go. I've got good tools for damage dealing and a solid utility kit, as well as the ability to spend a couple talent points into things like Thick Hide and make myself really, really tanky. And then right behind them in my mind right now is Preservation Evoker, which has really good damage that's incredibly easy to get out, especially in AoE, and big chunky heals that still move the health bars in a big way, even after the HP nerf. I do still get myself killed using Verdant Embrace more than I'd like to admit, so there's that. But if you're looking at the new healing class and wondering if it's going to be a viable main, I feel like there are more and more reasons to think that it is going to be very good. And honestly, I had a blast playing Disc Priest over the weekend. The buffs just made Atonement healing feel a lot more sturdy in my opinion, not to mention the fact that it was pumping quite hard on the DPS meter compared to before. It's definitely a pretty complex spec, but the more I got into it, I really got hooked on cranking out the damage and watching Atonements fill up those HP bars. This is definitely a spec I'm going to give a lot more attention to over the coming weeks, as it's just a load of fun and looking really strong now after the recent changes. So in summary, I think we got some positive changes for healers this week. Looks like Blizzard wants to emphasize healing throughput moving forward, but it felt like 40% increase was a little heavy for M+ content. I feel like the individual spec tuning did bring healers closer together as a whole and brought Disc, Holy Priest, and Resto Shaman all a little bit closer together in the healing pecking order. So that's my thoughts on all the recent changes and also my favorite healer at the moment. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. What do you think about all these changes? What spec are you considering maining? And if you want to see more videos, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and check out my stream Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 9 p.m. Pacific right here on YouTube. See you then, and happy healing.